Good morning, everyone. This is Michael Ellis. I'm the publisher of Rural Lifestyle Dealer magazine. Welcome to another webinar presented by Rural Lifestyle Dealer. And today's event is being brought to you free, courtesy of Bestway. They're the manufacturers of retriever pup self-loading trailers. Today's presenter, Bob Clements, is going to explore the topic of how to run a profitable service shop. Bob is recognized as the premier management consultant for the outdoor power equipment, agriculture, and power sport dealerships in North America. And he's going to become a contributor to Rural Lifestyle Dealer magazine as well. And we're going to look for his first column in the upcoming fall issue of the magazine. With that, we should be ready to roll. Thanks again for joining us. And we'll turn everything over to Bob Clements. Good morning, Bob.
Great. Good morning. Thanks, Michael. And I'm excited to have a chance to be a part of what Rural Lifestyle Dealer is doing, and very excited to be starting to do articles and writing for your publication. You guys are touching a really critical part of the marketplace out there, and I think you do a great job with it. Also want to thank Dave Benson with Bestway. Again, David, we've talked a little bit, and I appreciate you being a sponsor of this and supporting this to make it available for free for all the people on it today. If you know anything about me, I've been doing this for a lot of years now. Our expertise as a company is working in dealerships, and our expertise, if I had to put it someplace, there are several companies out there, but we tend to be really focused on service and parts. So service department is near and dear to my heart. So as we go through this, we do about 200 dealerships a year in outdoor power, sports, ag, construction, and their service and parts departments. Have a lot of experience in it. As I was at a dealership a couple of weeks ago, always learning. There's always new things that are coming up. Customers are shifting and changing. Manufacturers' issues are shifting and changing. So while we like to think a service department is this static thing that never changes, it's a living, breathing organism that you have to constantly be working with to develop, to really maximize what you can get out of it. So as Michael said, if you have questions, please feel free to ask them. I'll answer as many as we can, and if I don't get to answer your question, please go ahead and submit it. And as Michael said, at the end of the webinar over the next couple of days, I will give you a response to all of them. That's really what our goal is here. We want you to walk away, have an understanding of how important the service department is in your dealership, and if you got questions, that's what I want to do. And if I don't know the answer to it, I'll tell you I don't know the answer, but try to direct you to some place that does. That's my commitment to you. So let's go ahead and get started. I think the most important thing to keep in mind as we think about our service department in and of itself is understanding that the service really is the backbone of the dealership. And when I talk about that in that context, I understand that sales is critical. We've got to have the whole goods sales a part of it, but I find that too many dealerships today have built their whole future on whole goods, and the challenge with whole goods is that whole goods tend to be weather or economy directed, and there's not a lot of control you can have over it. If you're in a big ag dealership, you know the power of the economy and the commodities market and how that whole industry is really tightened up, where if you're on the rural lifestyle side of it, that's continuing to grow and be healthy and strong and vibrant, as well as is the outdoor power side of it. So when you think about the dealership, and I always tell the dealers that I work with, it's really important to understand that while the whole goods is the sexy part of the dealership, the equipment's shiny and bright and pretty. The backbone of the dealership is the service department, and the heart and the blood that flows through the dealerships is the parts department. But the backbone is where the service department is, and if the service department is not right, if the service department is putting out bad work, or putting out work in an untimely fashion, or having comebacks and things like this, it hurts your whole dealership. I can't tell you how many times I've been in the dealership and there's somebody looking at a new piece of equipment, and somebody at the other end of the counter is screaming and shouting at a service manager for the poor work that was done. And it does take a little bit of the excitement away for a new customer buying equipment from a dealership that has bad customer service in the service department. So it's the backbone, and if it's ran properly, it should be one of the most profitable pieces of your dealership. We strive when we work with dealers to get their service department at producing at 55% gross profit margin with a net back to owners of 20% of every labor dollar produced. So if you do your service department correctly and you get your people in your service department focused on putting out quality work, you can make a ton of money in it. The challenge that I find that most dealers have is that they know there should be money in their service department, but they've given up on it. It's kind of like, I have this safe full of $100 bills. I know there are $100 bills there. Everybody tells me there are. The safe is packed with $100 bills. I just don't know the combination. I don't know how to open it up to get to that money. And that's what my goal is as we go through this webinar today, is I want to show you that really a service department is the simplest thing to run in your dealership if you understand the basics of it and you understand how to tweak it to make it work. So that's what our goal is as we go through this webinar today. The thing that I try to get dealers to understand, and I grew up on a dairy farm in northwest Missouri, so I spent 18 years of my life with my head next to a Holstein cow. And in that little dairy community, there's a little cafe coffee shop combination still there today. And I'm guessing at 7 o'clock this morning there were 7 or 8 retired farmers sitting around the table, bitching and complaining about everything in life. We call them cavemen where I come from, citizens against virtually everything. But at that table, conversations happen. And as I tell all the dealers when I'm working with them in the service department, and conversations about dealers' service departments happen at that table. I know when my dad was still alive, when he would go down there, if somebody had a piece of equipment service, the experience they had at the dealership, whichever one it happened to be, was talked about at that coffee table. And as I tell the dealers, that's the most important thing to understand. If we're going to be successful, we have to figure out very early on in our service department what we're going to choose to be known for. It's that word of mouth. You know, I hear manufacturers talk about, marketing and branding, and I say, I've been doing this for almost 30 years now, and the most powerful marketing and branding has been and will always be word of mouth. And our job in our service departments, in my opinion, is to get the customers that leave there talking about us in a positive way. And as I always tell my service managers and my owners, you have to decide as an owner or a service manager what you're going to be known for. What are you going to have people, those farmers at that little table, those people that are together at church talking about your service department or that are going out to dinner with friends, what do you want them to say about your service department? And I tell all of my dealers that to me is the most important thing you have to think about. That's the most critical question you have to have, because they are going to say something. They're going to talk to people in some way about what you do. And when I work with service departments and my team works with service departments, we basically let the service manager and the dealership and the service techs know we are going to be known for the place that punches out the highest quality work of anybody around. You will never, ever in our shops have to apologize to anybody about the work that you put out, because I'm a firm believer that people don't care what something costs as long as it's right. When it leaves your service department, it has to be right. So the quality is what you have to be focused on. Years ago, and I'm a pilot, but years ago I owned an aviation maintenance facility, ended up selling it over to the service manager that I had. But I was laughing because when I took it over, it was right after 9/11. They had several techs there, and they were known for okay work. Now, if you know anything about airplanes, I always tell people in airplanes we don't get comebacks. Okay, we kind of expect it when it's in the air. We kind of expect it to stay in the air. And so as I was working with the technicians that I had then at that point, as I was paying them, and I said, look, we're going to be known for quality. We're going to be higher than anybody else. We're going to charge more than anybody else. And we're going to lose a few people because we're not going to be the cheapest anymore, because the owner was trying to be the cheapest, and that's just a good quick way to go out of a business. I said, but what we want to be known as quality. So while we may lose some people, we won't lose all of them, and we will gain more because of the quality of the work we put out. And so every job we do, every job that we bid out, we're going to build time in for final quality inspection. So if it's a job, and if we need an extra hour on that job to go back and make sure everything is perfect, then we're going to build it into the job right up front. We're not going to apologize for it. We're going to build it in. And I tell people, most of the people that have airplanes don't mind if you build a little extra time in every job just to make sure it's right. Now, I never really told the people that we were building extra time in, but we built it in, and when we priced it out, we made sure that that was there, because I was committed to making sure that everything that left the hangar had quality attached to it. Nobody would ever go back and say that I didn't do the job right, or that our people were slugs and didn't know what they're doing. They always complained a little bit about my pricing, but I'm okay with that. I don't mind having people complain about my price. I just can't have them complain about the quality of work that comes out of my shop. And I'm going to challenge you the same way as you're on this webinar. What are you going to be known for? If you all have that little coffee shop in your area, you all have that little church group that gets together after church on a Sunday, and you talk about things like that. You have to make a decision. And it's the most important part of it, which is why I have it in this webinar. What are you going to be known for? Don't worry about your price being too high. We're going to talk about pricing a little bit later in this webinar. I challenge you to be known for the quality. I challenge your technicians to act like professionals and to not say, well, gosh, it wasn't on the work order, so I didn't do anything about it. That's not what we do. We are going to be known for the quality of work that comes out of our shop. When those farmers are sitting around that little coffee table, they're going to say, well, they're a little high over at Bob's place, but if you want it done right, that's where you take it. And that's what I want you to be known for. So I want your people at that coffee table, that little table, I want them to say they're a little high over at ABC dealership. They're higher than anybody else, but if you want it done right, that's where you take it. And I'm telling you, 80+% of the people will come to you because price doesn't have that much impact on most people when it comes to repairs and service. You have to understand that 15% of your customer base only care about getting the lowest price. As I was at a dealership a while back, a guy was concerned. I was trying to get him to get his labor rate up. And he goes, but Bob, he said, you know, people they're just going to quit doing business with me. I go, no, they won't. They go, well, there's guys out there that have their own little shops that have trees and stuff like this that they pull equipment apart on. They're less than we are now. And I go, I don't care. There's always going to be somebody out there that's half of your price. There's always going to be somebody out there with a tree and a block and tackle on it that will split a tractor apart for $40 an hour, right? Those are not the people that we're interested in getting. They have 8 or 10 weeks worth of work out there because they're terrible at what they do and they have a lot of comebacks. Okay, that's not who we are as dealers. I don't care about that 15% of the customer base. I'm willing to let them go, right? I've got to build my business around the other part of it. So there's 15% of the people that are going to come into your service department that are going to beat you to death on price. I don't want those people, because if I have to continue to lower my price, and I have to do it at the expense of speed. Not efficiency, but speed. So the faster we work, if you're not efficient, if you're just working fast, you're going to put out crappy work. And so I can't have that happen because it goes against everything that I believe in the shop. So there's 15% of the people out there that don't care. It's like in the parts department. As I was talking to a dealer, a guy came up and he said, oh, our prices are too high, our prices too high, our prices too high. And I said, well, look, 15% of the people are price sensitive. So how many people yesterday came in and complained about your parts pricing? He said, well, I had 3 people come up and complain about the prices of our filter. I go, well, how many transactions did you do? And he went over to his system and he pulled up his report and he says, well, we did 40 transactions yesterday. And I said, well, if 15% of the people are price sensitive statistically, and that's true, I said, you should have had approximately 6 people complain about your price. So if you only had 2, your prices are probably not high enough. And he disagreed with me on that, but statistics would tell me that 2 people complaining about price is not even close to where I need to be worrying about my parts pricing. And I would tell you the same thing in service. You're going to have people walk in and go like, oh, you guys are outrageous. You guys are too high. I don't care, right? You go to a car dealer or a truck dealer, they're going to be higher than you are. So don't get caught up in this price thing, because price has very, very little to do for most people about the service work you do. 25% of the people that do business with you because they love you to death. Man, they've got a relationship with you. You've developed it over time. You've helped them out. You've taken away pain from them, and they're not looking to go to any place else. So this is the group of people here that we want to embrace. Many times these are the people here that we tend to abuse a little bit to take care of the people that want a cheap price, because they say, well, you know, Bob's been doing business with us for years. He'll understand, and so I'll take this guy that's beating me up on price and take care of him first. You take care of these people first. It's 25% of your customers buy from you because of the relationship that you've developed with them over time. Never, ever, ever take these people for granted. They don't mind what you charge. They don't bitch, complain, moan, whine. They just tickled to death that you took care of them. So that's a group of people that you got to keep your focus on. And then the next group is the group that we really want. It's the 60% that are out there that are not necessarily attached to any dealership right now. They're out there looking around. They buy based upon perceived value they see from doing business with you. They may have used you in the past. They may have tried other places. And I tell all of my service managers, this is the group of people we have to go after. You know, when I hear people talk about, you know, working to make customers satisfied, I say, you know, I know theoretically it makes sense that we want satisfied customers, but I tell my shops and my parts departments, I don't really care about satisfied customers. Satisfied customers fall into this 60%. I'm interested in taking satisfied customers and making them loyal customers. Loyal customers stay. They tell other people. They talk to other people about what you do. So you have to understand that from a service manager standpoint or from a dealer standpoint, what can we do in our business to take the 60% of the people that are satisfied with us, right? But keep in mind that if somebody else comes along that maybe has a little better price and puts out quality work, or somebody else comes along and has a brand new shiny building and maybe the price is the same as yours, these people are satisfied, but that doesn't mean that they're loyal. And I tell all of my dealers, I said, understand that satisfied people will leave you to go someplace else if they think they can be more satisfied someplace else. And it didn't leave you because they were dissatisfied. They found something that gave them more satisfaction than what you do. So you didn't do anything wrong. It's just that somebody else came along and did something that separated themselves a little bit from that person. So this is the group of people that we want to go after. And I tell all my people, if 25% of your people are currently loyal, what would happen if we could double that amount out of this 60%? What would happen if we could take 50% of all the customers we have out there that are currently doing business with and build them into this loyal customer? And that's your challenge in your dealership. You got to go after them. And I don't care whether it's service, parts, or sales. You are spending way too much time going after new people and trying to make them satisfied, and you're not spending enough time, energy, or your money on taking satisfied people and turning them into loyal people. And whether it's in service, parts, or sales, that's something you have to be working on in your dealership. Then we need to understand that, again, that it's not about the price. I tell people, again, 60% of the people are only price sensitive, or 15% are price sensitive. 60% will be price sensitive if they don't see that you're unique or different. One of the most important things that we have to do in our service department is we have to show people that we're uniquely different from everybody else out there. Uniqueness is what people pay for. I have a picture on the slide of a Ming Dynasty vase. This vase is worth millions of dollars. It's a vase from China. Why is it worth millions of dollars? Because it's unique, one of a kind, very rare. People will pay more money for things that are unique, one of a kind, and rare. Okay? If you're like every other vase, if you're like every other dealership, if you're like every other shop, if I go into your shop and it's messy and dirty and disorganized, and I walk in and you say, well, we'll get to you as soon as we can, or we'll try to get, and you don't give me times and dates and specifics, you're like every other shop out there. There's nothing about you that's unique. What I want you to do in your service department is to create uniqueness. What is it that you do that makes you unique from your competitors? And if you say, well, my people are friendlier, BS. You say, my people are better trained. I'm going to call you out on that too. My people are friendly. They smile more. We wash the equipment. So does everybody else. If you think that everybody else is not doing what you do, then you are missing the boat. And so you have to be thinking about, as a service manager or as an owner, you got to be sitting here thinking about, what is it that we do that makes us uniquely different from anybody else? Does your people have the ability to go on your website and schedule service in? Are you sending out texts and emails to keep them updated on parts that are coming in, or on when their equipment is going to be serviced and back in their hands? Those are the kinds of things you have to do today. Not difficult to do, but most people aren't willing to do them. So you have to ask yourself your question: what makes you unique from your competitors? That Ming Dynasty vase is worth millions of dollars. I can get a truckload of Chinese vases from Walmart, Target, or Kmart for $10. The difference is there's very few Ming Dynasty vases. I can get semi-trailer loads of vases from China. So if you're just going to be another Chinese vase, then you're not going to be worth a lot. Your goal is to create that uniqueness, to separate yourself from everybody else out there. And I'm going to challenge you, if you happen to be a service manager on this webinar, right, I'm going to challenge you today at lunch to make a list of things that you believe that truly make you unique. Right, and then look at those and see if you're just kidding yourself, or if it's true. right? And if it's true, congratulations. If it's not true, or you're just kidding yourself, and if it has to do with friendly, smiley, nice uniforms, that's not it. You're missing the whole thing here. You got to do something for me as a customer that creates a uniqueness. And that's what's going to get you more money, and that's what's going to drive people to your service department and help you make more money as you do it. Then you also have to understand that you have to, in many cases, get rid of people. Personnel changes, and this is one of the issues that we deal with a lot in shops. And if you're on this webinar as a service manager and owner, everybody tells me it's so hard to find good technicians, Bob. You just don't get it. I've been doing this 30 years. Good technicians are hard to find, but it doesn't mean you keep a bad one. Right? It doesn't mean you keep a slug. It doesn't mean that you keep somebody that's complaining and that's griping, that's a prima donna, right? That doesn't help you out. That's not going to help your shop out at all. So if you have a technician that you need to get rid of, right? Now's the time to do it. You're at that time of year for most of you that you're going into postseason. Okay, for many of you, your season has peaked and it's starting to wind down. And so you don't want to take a technician that's a slug. You don't want to take a technician that's a drain on your whole system back there and carry him all the way through winter and then go back in the spring with him and think, gosh, I wish I'd have got rid of this guy in the wintertime. Now's the time. So in almost all cases, making personnel changes will improve your department. If you've got a bad employee, get rid of him. If you got an employee that's not a team player, get rid of them. Now you got to do it properly. There's ways to do that, but you don't hold on to them just because you go, gosh, Bob, it's just so hard to find a good technician. I get it. I know it is, but they're out there. And most of the time they're out there and you can't get them because you're not able to afford them, and you can't afford them because you're not making enough money in your shop to be able to afford it. There's not a one of you that's on this webinar that couldn't afford to pay a technician $20 to $22 an hour if they were producing at 100% for you. It's just not. And I tell people again, I could find good technicians, right, at that range. I can find good technicians, and I might have to do bonuses and things like that on top of it. I can find good technicians at 25, 28 bucks an hour. And if you're at $75 or $80 an hour for your posted labor rate, you can pay that kind of money. If your shop is running right and you've got everything right, you can pay more than you dreamed you can pay. 30% of your effective labor rate can be allocated to service tech bonuses and hourly rates. 30%, that's our target number there. So don't be afraid to change people out because you can't find good people, because I would challenge you, there are good people out there. There are wonderful technicians out there in shops that are terrible shops, and they're looking for a place to go. They're looking for somebody to be a part of, a team to be a part of, that they can make improvements in and do what they do best. Technicians are fabulous people, but there are a few that are prima donnas, and you got to move them on out of your system. Do not ever be afraid to get rid of and make a personnel change in your service, and I would say the same thing in your parts department. Part of what you have to do if you're going to be successful in this business is you got to set expectations. And I tell this to all the people that I work with. Know what you expect from your people and your department. I tell people in the service department, I expect professional work. So when work comes in our shop and leaves our shop, I expect us to be the ultimate professional on it. I expect it to be on time and budget. So if I tell you I'm going to have a piece of equipment back to you by this time, come hell or high water, I'm going to do everything in my ability to make that happen, and I'm going to bring it in on budget. If I told you this is what it's going to be, that's what it's going to be. That's what a professional service department has the ability to do. If you can't do that, then you need to work and get to a point where you can. Then I want every customer that walks out of my service department, I want them happy, excited, and wowed. I want them to walk away going, I have never experienced that kind of experience in my life in a dealership. I want to wow people. And that's what you need to get your people to understand. Professional work, on time and budget, and happy customers. There's no reason that we can't deliver that in our service departments. So you set your expectations as an owner, you set your expectations as a service manager or service writer, and say, look, this is what we're going to deliver here. And then your job as an owner or a service manager is to get rid of the barriers and the hurdles that are keeping those three things from happening and getting your people moving in the right direction. You do it, and you're going to have a huge change take place in your service department. Make sure that everyone is pulling their oar. You know, I was a history sociology major in college, and I studied ancient Roman and Greek history, and one of the things that I loved was the old warships. And the old warships, when they go into battle, they had this big ship out here, and it had a small square sail on it, but for the most part it was all powered by people on oars, and they were slaves. And there was 3 different levels on most of the warships, and everybody's job was to pull an oar. And so if you were at the top level, you were actually a better off slave than you were at the bottom. But I tell people, again, business and a service department's the same way. Everybody's got to grab an oar and pull. I can't have just one person, right, pulling the oar. I can't have 2 or 3 people pulling an oar and then having somebody that's in the shop that's not doing what I need them to do. They're not keeping their area cleaned up. They're not being a team player. I can't have them in my ship, because if I have one person in a small dealership, in a small shop that's not pulling their weight, pulling their oar, I start losing momentum. I start going around in a circle. So again, make sure that everyone is pulling their oar. That's a joke in our company. I'm here to pull oars. I've got some time to pull an oar. Can I pull the oar for you? And I want you to be thinking about the same thing. If you got a warship out there, you got 2 or 3 people probably in your dealership that are on skis or in a rubber tube behind it, bitching and complaining because the people in front aren't rowing fast enough. Cut them loose, be done with them. So make sure that everybody's pulling an oar. Let's understand our fees real quickly as we go through this. Now, I know this varies based upon dealer to dealer, and I know I have a lot of people that are rural lifestyle dealers that also handle outdoor power equipment. So I wanted to put this in here. For some of you that are on the webinar that are more in the big ag or construction, this is not going to apply to you as much as it will for those of you that are on the webinar that are dealing more in outdoor power and compact tractors and things like this. So in every one of the dealerships we work with, if you're handling especially outdoor power, we have what we call a diagnostic fee, and a diagnostic fee is what we're going to charge you to look at equipment that we don't really want to end up in our shop repairing. I have a picture of an old string trimmer up there, and for those of you that are in the outdoor power side, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about here. What I want to do is not have somebody bring in a $79 Ryobi string trimmer and want me to look at it and give them an estimate, because number one, it's going to take me half an hour of labor and a minimum of probably $30 worth of parts to fix anything on something like that. The string trimmer is only worth $79 new. You are not going to repair it when I come back with an estimate. So we charge what we call a diagnostic fee, and the diagnostic fee is a charge of 1/2 hour of time to look at that equipment and give you an estimate on it. So if my labor rate's $70 an hour, I would charge a $35 diagnostic fee for me to give you an estimate on that piece of equipment. That would be charged up front. What I'm trying to do is to keep that piece of equipment out of my shop, because if I go back into your shops right now, if you handle and you do any work on equipment like this, there's going to be 50 Ryobi Craftsman string trimmers hanging on a rack back there that you guys have time in that nobody chose to come back and pick back up. And I do the same thing on riding equipment. So if people are bringing in old Craftsman mowers or things like this that they got at a garage sale and they want you to do an estimate for them, we do not do that estimate for free on that type of equipment. We charge a diagnostic fee. On ride-on equipment, for consumer-based ride-on equipment, it's an hour. So if my labor rate's $70 an hour, I charge $70 to do the diagnostic. And if it's handheld equipment or walk-behind equipment like walk mowers or things like this, I charge a half an hour. So if you're not doing that, I would encourage you to do it. You will get a little bit of pushback from people that are not customers of yours that are upset that you're going to charge them in advance to look at it, but you have to understand I've got to charge somebody for that time. I'm charging it because I don't really want that piece of equipment in my shop. Now, if they choose to have you fix it, then we do apply that amount of time, that amount of money toward the repair. So it's not that they lose it. But again, I want to try to keep that equipment out of my shop. It sucks up tons of time and tons of space. The next type of fee you need to understand in a high-performance shop is your shop supply fee. And your shop supply fees are used to offset your consumable cost and for upgrading your equipment. Most of the dealerships we work with charge 5% of the labor as a part of a shop supply fee. So we would use this for carb cleaner, brake cleaner, little squirts of this, little squirts of grease. Covers our shop towels. If you happen to use floor dry or pig mats, it helps cover the cost of those things. And it also helps me set aside money to buy new equipment with. So if I need a 10-ton floor jack to split tractors apart with, the question is well, where do we come up with the money to do that? Well, that's in an account in your accounting software called Shop Supply Fee, and that's money that the service manager should have access to buy tools and to pay for things that they need to pay for. So my service managers don't have to come and beg the owner for a 10-ton floor jack. If they need it, they can go to the Shop Supply Fee account, see how much money's in there, in there and purchase it from that. If it's specialty equipment, then we buy it out of that, but we then also continue to add charges to it. So if I had a laptop I needed to purchase to do shoot codes or to do diagnostics on EFI engines, if I got $3,000 in that system, then I'm going to add a time in every job to cover the cost of that. If I need a bore scope that's maybe a $300 bore scope, I would add 1/10 of an hour or 2/10 of an hour on every job I use that scope on to help offset the cost of that. But that money would flow back into that shop supply fee account. So I know a lot of dealers take that count and then they zero it out at the end of the year and they count that money as revenue. That's really not how it should be done. That account should be carried through year after year, and a service manager should have the ability to use that money that they've garnered out of that to help pay for the things that they're using in their shop as a part of that. We normally find 5% is ample, and most of my dealerships that we consult with, they cut that off at certain amounts. So, so if you're in outdoor power or compact tractors, that might be up to $50. As you get into bigger tractor, big ag tractor construction and things like this, it might cut off at $100. So you have to play around with that a little bit, but that's what that shop supply fee money's for. Then the other one is your environmental fees, and if you're not charging this, you should be charging it, and it's used to take care of oil, waste handling costs, and maintenance of your wash area. As I was at a dealer the other day, he has a wash area, and it would not meet EPA governmental standards. Now, he doesn't have to worry about that right now because there's no pressure in the county or in the state to do it in the state that he's in, but as I told him, I said, that's going to change. And at some point, you're going to be required to spend $40,000, $50,000 on a wash bay that lets us separate the oils and things out, and then we're going to have to maintain that. So if you don't currently charge an environmental fee, you should be charging it, even though maybe you're burning your own waste oil or you're having somebody pick your oil and stuff up for free. There's still money I need to be setting aside that ultimately I'm going to need either to maintain my existing wash area or to help me put in a wash area to do that with. So your environmental fee, and most of my guys are charging $2 or $3 per work order for that. Again, doesn't seem like much until you multiply it by 2,000 work orders, and then all of a sudden you've got $4,000 to maybe $6,000 that you're building up in that. So make sure that you're doing those fees on there. As a side note, do not call that an EPA fee. I know I had a dealer that was calling it an EPA fee. You cannot call that an EPA fee. The EPA is a governmental agency, and they do not charge fees to dealers. So you call it an environmental fee. So just make sure if you're calling it currently an EPA fee, stop that, change it over, and just call it an environmental fee from that perspective. All right. Set your labor rate for non-purchasing customers. We talked a little about labor rate earlier on it, but people say, well, how do I determine how much I'm going to charge for my labor? Your labor rate is set for non-purchasing customers. We have two types of customers that come into our service department, purchasing and non-purchasing. A purchasing customer is somebody that bought the equipment from us, therefore we've made some money on it and in profit, and so we have a labor rate for them. The posted labor rate is for non-purchasing customers. So you bought a piece of equipment from somebody else because you wanted to save $300 18 states away. You bring it in, and now you want me to work on it. I'm going to work on it, but I'm not going to work on it at the same rate as I work on the equipment that the guy that brought it from me. So if your current labor rate is $85 per hour, I would ask you to set your new labor rate to $95 an hour, and that is the labor rate you're going to charge for non-purchasing customers. That would include manufacturers who you're doing warranty work for, as well as people that didn't buy the equipment from you. People that bought the equipment from you would get then a $10 per hour discount on that labor rate because they bought the equipment from you. So it gives them a perk of being a customer that's buying from you, because part of the profitability out of that sale goes to help you in the shop also with marketing and things like that. So you have your labor rate, and in most cases, your labor rate needs to be set a little higher than what it is. When I go into an area and determine labor rate, by the way, I don't call around to all the competitive dealers and say, guys, what are you charging in your shop? We call that in my company pooling ignorance. If you're calling 10 other dealers and all the dealers are at $70 an hour, and you say, well, I'm with all the other dealers, they're calling everybody else too and finding out that everybody's at $70 an hour. That's a stupid way to set your labor rate. Your labor rate should be set based upon what the local car or truck dealers in your area are charging in their shop. There's a lot of time and energy spent by Ford, Chevy, Toyota, Honda, Mack trucks, lots of money spent to determine what a labor rate should be for that area they're in. So we don't have to go back and rethink this. Just Go look at what their labor rate is, and you need to be 10 to 15% below that if you're working on compact tractors and outdoor power equipment. If you're working on big ag and construction, you need to be at that rate, because it's the same kind of thing. So I tell people again, so your labor rate is not based upon you calling around to other dealers and then deciding to be where you're at. Just go find out what the real numbers are for your area and set your labor rate based upon what the local car or truck dealer is doing. Be a little bit lower than that, and you're going to be in great shape. That's where most people get their sense of a fair labor rate anyway, because their cars are being serviced and trucks are being serviced much more often than their tractors, their outdoor power equipment, or their compact tractors. So keep that in mind as you're looking at setting your labor rate. Understand what you sell. Your shop is all about selling time. That's what we sell. We don't sell labor hours. I know there's other consultants that say you do, but I've been doing this 30 years. Time is your product, not labor dollars sold. I don't care what your labor dollars sold are. I don't care what you charge yourself internally for an internal labor rate. I don't care in the shop. We sell time. If I have 3 technicians and they're 8 hours a day, I have 24 hours of time that I, as a service manager, need to sell. 24 hours. Each hour is broken into 10 segments. Each segment is 6 minutes. So we sell time in our shops by the 10th of an hour. All right. So if I have 3 technicians, they're there 8 hours a day apiece, 3 times 8, 24. Each hour has 10 segments of 6 minutes each in them. I have 240 segments of time to sell. If my labor rate is $80 an hour, each time segment is worth $8. So I have 8 times $240 that 240 segments. I have $8 times 240 time segments. I am responsible for selling every day as a service manager. That's your job. As a service manager, the owner is buying time for you to sell. Your job is to make sure that it gets sold every day. Because unlike parts or unlike whole goods, at the end of the day, we don't get to carry the time we didn't sell over to somebody else. We have to throw it out like a bad gallon of milk. So again, you sell time, not labor dollars. I don't care what you sell the time for. I have other people that talk about selling their internal labor rates at the same rate they sell their external labor rates or warranty labor rate. I don't care as an owner what you choose to charge yourself for time. It's just a gimmick anyway. You're putting money in one pocket and taking it out of the other. It doesn't matter to me. What I want to know is there was 240 time segments to be sold. At the end of every day, we do a measurement, a labor analysis report for a service manager. I want to know how many of those hours, how many of those segments got sold. So understand that time is your product, not labor dollars sold, and we sell time by the 6-minute increments. So there's 10 time segments in every hour, and I expect as a service manager you're accountable for every one of them, and I expect every one of them to be sold to somebody. If you're not selling them all, you either need to get more work in your shop or you need to reduce the number of technicians you have. That's the reality of it. That's how business works. Repeatability creates profitability. Part of what we're trying to do all the time in our shops is to take what we do and repeat it over and over and over again. And again, that's the challenge that a lot of shops have, because you don't have good processes. So if you don't have a good process, nothing about what you do is repeatable, and nobody can sit here and do it over and over and over again. You go to McDonald's, you go to a manufacturing facility, everything, we get what we get today because manufacturers and the fast food restaurants, they've made everything repeatable. The more repeatable it is, the less skilled person I even have to do it. So repeatability creates profitability, and repeatability comes from you creating and building good processes in your service department. We're going to talk about that in just a little bit. You also then have to create baselines. When I go into dealerships, or one of my other guys go into dealerships, we ask some basic questions. The first rate is what's your average tech efficiency? So if a tech's on a work order, right, and then they finish that work order and they bill out that work order, on the average, what would if Bill's a technician, what would his efficiency be? We call it tech efficiency. Some people call it wrench efficiency or bench efficiency, but it's literally you're on a job for 2 hours and you bill out 2 hours, then you would be 100% efficient. That's tech efficiency. Most technicians are running 50 to 60% efficient. I'm just telling you that. Most technicians, if they get 4 to 5 billable hours a day out of their wrench time, right, that's their efficiency. And that's what's killing your shop. Recovery rate is a measurement of how many hours the tech is there versus how many hours they're billing out. And I would say, again, most shops that we work with, if you're recovering at 70% or 75%, you're in the average. You're not making any money in your shop until you're recovering at 85. So if you're not getting a minimum of 6 billable hours a day out of every technician that's there 8 hours, your shop is losing money. It is being subsidized by parts and your whole goods department. So you've got to get your recovery rate up. And then flat rating is what percent of the work are you flat rating? In most shops that we work with, and we work across the board in all kinds of shops, there's no reason that 75 to 80% of all the work in your shop cannot be flat rated. It's easy to do. You just have to understand some basics on it. And I don't have time to go into a lot of flat rating here. And Michael, this may be another webinar that we do at some point in the future, because there's just a misunderstanding about what flat rating is and how to do it. And every one of you, regardless if you have a flat rate guide that somebody's created, it's not difficult to flat rate work. So where are you now relative to those numbers? Tech efficiency is what percent of each hour they wrench are they able to bill. And again, I talked about this already. Your business management software will look this up. I expect a technician to be billing out a minimum, if they're a B-level tech, 100%. So if you're on a job and the manager has priced that job out correctly, the job should be priced out so that a B-level technician could complete that job in the time that's allocated for it. If you have technicians that are B-level technicians that are not at 100%, you are not pricing your work out correctly, or you don't have a B tech, you got a C tech working on a B job. So you don't have the right job in the hands of the right technician. A-level technicians on a work order should be running 115 to 120% efficient. So if you've got an A-level technician and he's only hitting 100, you are not pricing your work out correctly as a service manager. You're not flat rating it. You're running it too close to the time that it needs. So you have to understand that. I expect tech efficiency for a B-level tech to be at 100%. I expect an A-level tech to be at 115 to 120%. So when we look at tech efficiency, if you've got an A-level tech that's only running 85%, the question I would ask my manager, is it my tech's fault, or did I as a manager not price that job out correctly? Or is there something else that's going wrong, but something is happening there, so you need to be aware of that. Recovery rate is what percent of each hour are you paying techs that they're able to bill, and again, recovery rate's a simple measurement of billable time divided by clock time. So if they're there 8 hours and they bill out 8 hours, you've recovered 100% of that time. That's what I'm looking at. There's another rate I'm not going to get into because we don't use it that much, but recovery rate is part of what you're required as a manager to do. I expect you as a manager to be recovering at a minimum of 85%, at a minimum. There's honestly no reason that there's no manager out there that should be able to recover at 100%. Now there's some goofy ways some of the other people out there look at time available to sell. I look at real time available to sell. So if a technician's at a service training event for a week, you didn't have time for them to sell. Some other people would say that's time you need to calculate in. I think that's all BS. If they're not there and they can't physically turn a wrench and they're in training, I want them in training because they'll be more efficient. So anyway, so my evaluation of recovery rate is billable time they had available versus the clock time that they're there. That's your recovery rate. Service manager's responsibility again is to cover 100% of that paid hours, and that's what I'm going to measure you on. And our service managers get their bonuses based upon recovering at 85 and up. So in my shops, if you're a service manager, you get a bonus. If your recovery rate is 85 to 95%, you get a dollar amount bonus on every hour the shop produces. If you're 96 to 105% recovering, you get a much better bonus on every hour produced in the shop. And if you're 106% above on recovery rate, you get a really sweet bonus for every billable hour produced in the shop. In most of my shops, my service managers can easily make, if they've got enough technician do it, but they can make $1,000 to $1,500 a month pretty easy just in bonuses. But again, it pays me so much from an ownership standpoint. And the other thing is when you're recovering at about 106%, you've got a 4-inch hose that's pumping out 4 inches of water. So at that point, you're going to need to look at adding another technician. And by the way, just recovery rate is how I determine if you need another technician. When somebody says, gosh, Bob, we're really behind, we need another tech, and I look and you're only recovering at 70%, the last thing you need is another technician because it's going to drive your recovery rate down. You need to get the technicians you have more efficient. And so adding another technician to a problem, to a shop that's recovering at less than 85% is a bad idea, because you've got so much capacity that you're not currently using with the techs that you have. Unless you only have one tech, then maybe it's not such a bad idea. Flat rate more work, we already talked about that. If you don't have a flat rate system, use your manufacturer's warranty rate guide. And then most of you, and again, I know we got a lot of different types of dealerships represented here, but in most of you, if you use your manufacturer's warranty rate guide and you added 50% to that, that would cover all of your work. That's what we call equipment in good condition. Equipment has 3 levels of condition to it. excellent to fair, excellent to good, good to fair, fair to poor. We add 50% to warranty rate guides for equipment that is in good to fair condition. That means it has mild to moderate corrosion and that most of the shoulders are still on all the bolts. If I'm going to bring out acetylene as one of my tools, so now we're moving into equipment that's what we call level 3, fair to poor condition, then I add another 40% onto that time. So that's how you use flat rates. So flat rates, warranty rate guides for the manufacturers are based upon equipment being in near new condition. So again, so you have to make some adjustments based upon your manufacturer's rate guides. I know most of you already are bumping that up, so it's not a problem. I'd say in most cases that you're assuming that there's only one flat rate. That's not true. That's your mistake that you're making in flat rating. You add more time based upon equipment condition. We have equipment that's either excellent to good, good to fair, or fair to poor. As you get into the fair to poor, this is equipment that's been heavily abused. As I said again, I'm probably going to use a plasma torch or acetylene as one of my tools. I'm going to make you pay more time for that. So think about that with your flat rating. Use average efficiency for time and material work. When you're working with technicians, again, one of the things that I stress is making sure that if you do a time and material job, and for those of you that don't know what it is, if I can't flat rate a job, then I'm going to tell the customer that we're going to have to charge them for time and material because I don't know what it is. And this could be electrical issue. It could be something to do with hydraulics. It could be something that there's no flat rate for. I really won't know what it's going to be until I get into it and see what's going on with it. So when you're using when you have to do time and material work, I would use a technician's average efficiency as a part of the billing equation. So as an example, if I have a technician that's 110% efficient and we put him on a time and material job and let's say that the time and material job ends up taking him 6 hours to do, okay? I would add another 10% to that. So I'd make it 6 hours and 30 minutes, or I'd probably make it 7 hours if it were me. I would build that time up because if I'd had that technician on a flat rate job, he would have produced me at 110 or 120%. So I use a technician's average efficiency during a 2-week period of time as a multiplier on time and material work. And I think when you get into that, you're going to find it's going to make your shop more profitable. And it's fair to you. In most cases, if it's a time and material job, you guys know as well as I do, you're taking your best technician, you're putting on a time and material job. And if they were doing flat rating, they could make you a lot more money. So I'm not cheating anybody in it. I'm giving you my best technician on time and material work. You're still going to come out way ahead as a customer instead of me putting a B-level tech on a job that's an electrical diagnostic that you're going to try to figure out what that is. So you're way ahead of me using my best tech on it. I'm just going to bill you a little bit more for that time because I used my best tech on it, and it hurt my shop if I don't. So time and material, use the average tech efficiency for a 2-week period of time as a multiplier on time and material work. Start with a good process, and we talked about process before, and again, I got a whole workshop just on process. But again, you understand that from the moment equipment comes in to the moment equipment leaves, you need to have a documented process for everything that happens. We have about an 8-page process that we put in place in a dealership when we do dealerships, and I tell people it literally from the moment a piece of equipment touches our lot to the moment that equipment is back in their hands, we have a process for everything that happens. So that if at any point something breaks down, I can go back to my process and say, oh, I see where we broke our process down here. I see where it fell apart here. So making sure, again, you've got good processes for everything. Literally, from the moment a work order is created all the way to the point where the customer has the equipment back in their hand, you need to have a documented step-by-step process in your shop. We talked about a little bit earlier slide. If it's not repeatable, you can't be profitable doing it. Process gives you repeatability, and that's what you're trying to do in your service department. And then lastly here, then we're going to come in for questions, is to develop a compensation program that's performance-oriented and that reinforces your process. This is probably the question I get the most asked on. Bob, I've got a comp program in place, and it does. All I'm doing now is paying out more money, and the work in the shop still is terrible. Well, you build your process first, okay? So let's just go back to 101. Don't put a compensation program in place that gives people more money for doing what they should be doing anyway. Okay, the first thing you have to do in your service department is you've got to create a process. Once I have the process created, then I can build a compensation program that reinforces the process. Okay, most dealerships put a compensation program in place, but there's no process, okay? And so then the whole thing starts to collapse, or somebody figures out a way to cheat it. In our system, we have a process. The process is set up so that you as a B-level tech can be at a minimum of 85% on any work order that you touch. So in our system, once we have the process in place, then we build a compensation program that's built around the process. So and we pay all of our technicians an hourly rate. So I'm not a big fan of piecework or flat rating like the auto or the trucking industry. I find that it's harder for me to find technicians. And besides that, if I've got good technicians, they've got families and people to feed, and I want to make sure that I help them have a good life. But if I've got a technician and I'm paying him an hourly rate, so let's just say for fun, I've got a technician, I'm paying $15 an hour. And my labor rate is $80 an hour. It's my effective labor rate, which is I take all of my costing away, and then from my posted and my effective labor rate, it becomes the difference between those two. So let's say my effective labor rate is $80 an hour. I could pay 30% of that $80 an hour out to a technician that was 100% efficient. So if I've got a technician, and which would be $24 an hour. So if I've got a technician and I'm paying $15 an hour now, I could pay him up to $24 per hour using bonuses if he were 100% efficient. And so that's the way our compensation programs are set up. So in that particular case, if I had a technician that was 85 to 100% efficient, so in every 8-hour day, if he was billing out a minimum, or she were billing out a minimum of 6 hours a day, I would give them, in my system, and it depends upon where you're at, but I would probably give them a $2 per billable hour bonus plus their $15 an hour. So in an 8-hour day, if they bill out 6 hours, they would pick up an extra $12 in bonus plus their $15 per hour, okay? If they were 101 up to 125% efficient, I would take that $2 and I would go to a $4 rate. So now if they're there 8 hours and they bill out a minimum of 8.5 hours, so they have to bill out more than 8 hours to be 101% efficient, but let's say just for fun they bill out 10 hours in an 8-hour day because we're flat rating, okay, now they would pick up a $40 bonus on those 10 hours instead of a $20 bonus because now they've moved into that other level. All right, so it's all built around my process. If they were 126% or higher, I would give them a $6 bonus per billable hour instead of a 4 or a 2. So at 126% now, I'm getting 11 hours out of them, or so let's just say 11 for fun. So now they would pick up a $66 bonus instead of a 44 or a 22. That's how you build your compensation program. Keep it simple, have it based around performance. So ours is 85 to 100% this bonus, 101 to 125% this bonus, and 126% and up, they get a higher bonus up there. But we don't even build a compensation program until I've got a process in place, because if you do, it's going to fail. Because what happens is the guys, you didn't change anything about your process, and now all of a sudden the guys are trying to make more money, but your process is all broken. It's got barriers, hurdles, rivers they have to cross, and they can't do it, and then pretty soon your compensation program that you were setting up to be a motivating factor with your employees turns into be a demotivator. And so I tell people again, your compensation program is the last part of what you're doing in your shop, not the first part. And we have phenomenal success using the system we've used, and we've tried, in the years we've been doing this, I've tried dozens and dozens of systems, and I find the easiest way to do it, it's simple. You can run a report every night out of your business management software that shows the performance by technician for that day. We do have a couple of caveats if you remember the very first slide, and then we're going to get ready and we're going to do some questions here real quick. But in the very first slide, or the second slide, I talked about quality, quality, quality. Our technicians, if you're in ag or construction, you get 0 comebacks in a 2-week period of time. 0, 0, 0. If you have 1 comeback, something that you did wrong that you should have caught, that you should have done, okay, you lose 100% of your bonus. So for a lot of my guys, I've got a dealership over in Clarksville, Tennessee. It's a Kubota dealership. Those guys would lose $1,000 in a 2-week. I mean, I got 2 techs over there that average $1,000 every 2 weeks in bonuses. So if they had 1 comeback, they would lose $1,000. Trust me, they only lose that once, and then you don't have a problem with quality. These guys, their bonuses are based upon them having quality. If you're in outdoor power or compact tractors, then I give you 2 comebacks in a 2-week period of time. I give you actually 1 if you're in compact tractors. If you're in outdoor power doing string trimmers and walk-behind mowers and stuff, because your volume that you're turning through is so much greater, I do allow for a couple of those in a 2-week period of time. But I'm a nut on that. So I go back again, is I expect you, I'm willing to pay you really good money, but you got to put out good work. And by the way, not everything that everybody says is a comeback is a comeback, and it truly has to be something that the technician did wrong or didn't do correctly that made it come back in. So if I had a front seal leaking on a tractor and it comes back in and the front seal still leaking, if the front seal was bad in the beginning, then that's not a comeback. If the technician didn't put it in correctly and it's leaking, that is a comeback. So I leave that up to the service manager to be fair with the technicians on it. All right, let's go ahead and let's pop up some questions, Michael.
That's great, Bob. Thanks very much. I can tell from the amount and the type of questions that have come in so far that everybody's really dialed in with what you're talking about here. So we'll get to as many questions as we can. And again, if we don't hit it right now, we'll send the questions home with Bob, and we'll post those answers up on the website and the replay. Let's start with this one. Can you talk about the varying importance of service metrics like individual versus overall department gross profit percentage? Additionally, what do you see as more important, gross profit or efficiency percentage?
Sure, it's a great question, Michael. So the question is about service metrics and individual versus overall department. We talked about that a little bit. So I would expect a technician, again, their individual number would be a minimum of 85% tech efficiency. That's wrench time versus spillable time. I would expect the department, the service manager departmental numbers to be based upon recovery rate, and I expect, again, a minimum of 85% recovery. So that would be the amount of time I'm purchasing up for a technician, as an example, 8 hours, versus the amount of time that technician is billing out. Just as kind of another thought. So we talked about some numbers here, but the numbers that you want to look at, and if you have a pen, you might want to write this down. So if I were to look at $80 per hour labor rate, 30% of that $80 or $24 of that $80 can be allocated for technician hourly pay and bonuses. Okay, so out of the 80, $24, 30% would be allocated for that. 15% would be allocated for management and administrative costs. Okay, so out of that, I would have $12 for every billable hour produced that would be set aside for that. 35% of that $80 is for departmental costing. I have a service department I have to pay for insurance, lights, heating. I have trucks. I have staff inside that have to take care of that. I have unemployment, workers' comp, Social Security, all those things. So 35% of that $85 is going to be allocated for what we call departmental costing. I've got this department I have to pay for outside of the people in it. I would expect, Michael, 20%, $16 of every $80 to go in the owner's pocket as net profit. So when you think about the numbers, that's how we do it when we go into a dealership. So it's 30, 15, 35, 20% net profit. So at $80 per hour, $16 of every hour produced should be going back into the owner's pocket as net. Everything's been taken care of.
Next up, what is the industry standard productivity rate, and how do you enforce training issues and attitude in the technicians?
Well, the industry standard varies so much, but I would say when we go into service departments, the average shop is probably recovering at about 60 to 65%. That's pretty typical for us, and that whether it's construction or at big ag, compact, or outdoor power, that's kind of it. It should be 85. Okay, so because you're not making money in your shop until you're at 85. That's just the magic number. At 75, you're breaking even. 85, now the owners are starting to make some money. In terms of reinforcing training, I think that goes back again. I'm a nut on training. So manufacturers provide wonderful training, and I'm a big fan of getting your technicians to training because it makes them faster. So how do you reinforce it? If you have a compensation program that is based upon efficiencies, your people will naturally want to go to those programs because coming back, they're going to be better at what they do. What happens is you send people to school, they get faster. You as a service manager are real-time billing, meaning they worked on a job for 6 hours and you bill the customer 6 hours. Well, how are you going to pay for the training that these people just went through? If you just charge customers the time it took, you'd be better off never to send people to training. You want them slow and only using hand tools. So that's why you've got to get into flat rating. You've got to flat rate jobs because that way training will actually pay for itself for the owner of the company. If you just real-time bill everything, then an owner is just wasting money. spending money to train to make their people faster, and then you're billing them less than you used to bill them for the same job. So tie your compensation program into productivity, and then as a service manager, you got a flat rate. You're killing your dealership and you're killing yourself if you're not flat rating. Again, I would say a minimum of 70%.
All right, I love this question in a day and age where everybody's dialed in, 100% of the time. Can you offer suggestions on how to manage cell phone usage and other distractions in the shop?
Yeah, absolutely. So in our shops, you can't bring a cell phone in. So a manager can have one, but actually in all of our dealerships, in the employee handbooks we set up, there is a no cell phone policy. So if you want to bring a cell phone to work, God bless you, you can do it, but keep it in your truck. It does not come into my shop. Number one, a shop is a dangerous place to be. There's equipment moving around. There's lots of things moving, and the last thing I want is somebody killed in my shop. So we do not allow cell phones in the service department, and I do not allow them in the parts department. Salespeople can have them because that's part of how they do business. But in our dealerships, in the employee handbook, we have a zero cell phones can come into the dealership. So I just eliminated from the very beginning. I've seen guys sharpening blades. They got a cell phone pressed up against their ear. They've got a grinder sitting there. Sparks are flying off of it. And I walk over, take it out of their hand. We shut it off because that's all it is a workers' comp claim to me. I'm just not going to allow it. So you just don't allow it. That's how it is. And if you have an employee handbook, make sure it's got a no cell phone policy in it. I had a person again here a while back says, well, what happens in an emergency? We have 8 lines coming into this dealership. Trust me, if you have an emergency in your family, somebody will be able to reach us and we'll be able to get to you. If you want to go out at your break for the morning break or the afternoon break or at lunch and use your cell phone, that's great. Just doesn't come back into the dealership. So I'm a little hard on that, but again, it's a safety issue for me, Michael, in the shop more than anything else.
Yeah, that sounds like a great way to deal with it. We've got time for one last one here, and again, we'll get to all the questions. It might be offline, but we'll get the answers back to you. This one comes from a dealer who says he handles between 1,500 and 2,000 walk mowers over the course of a year, and sometimes more than that. The question is, they take in all brands. How do you determine which brands to take in, which brands not to take in? And it's just a matter of dealing with time. So what's your best advice there?
Well, I would say again, that's not a large amount for outdoor power in terms of walk behind 21-inch mowers. We sell time in a shop, so I always tell my guys, if I can get parts for it and we can sell time for it, I want it in my shop. So I don't really care. It doesn't make any difference to me. If it's not a brand we sell, I add more time to the work because I know it's going to take me more time to look up the parts and to do the work. So I would just build some extra time into those, but I would never turn away work. We sell time. I don't care who I sell it to, as long as I can get the parts and I believe I can repair the equipment and make the repair good, I'm going to do the work. So that's me. Again, I would add a little bit more cost to that piece of work, that piece of equipment, Michael, if it didn't come from me, because if it's a brand of mower that I'm not familiar with, it's going to take my guys a little bit more time to do it. So I would just add a little bit more time to that. But again, if I can get parts for it, I sell time. That's what I'm in business to do.
Is that the $10 additional fee you were talking about earlier? Is there a different metric you use as far as the additional
that would
cost?
be a little different. Yeah, that would be the posted labor rate would go up $10. This most likely, I'm guessing, because we work with a lot of outdoor power equipment dealerships, these are probably coming in during a preseason service for the season, something more like that, where you maybe have what's called a menu priced rate. So to do a full service on this mower, I'm going to charge $89. So it's a full package. It'd be like doing a 200-hour service on a tractor that you sell. There's a flat rate. In most of the dealerships already have that's called menu pricing instead of flat rating. You already have a menu price for that. If it was equipment that I didn't sell, I would probably move that up maybe 10%. So I might charge an extra $8 or an extra $12. So if it's equipment that we sell and you have a menu price for it, your menu price is on equipment that you sell. If this is in a part of a winter service, a preseason service, something like that, I would add a little bit more to that to make that happen. So little different. So in pricing, we have our posted labor rate, flat rate, and then we have menu pricing. And menu pricing is we've already created packages for services that they're called menu pricing because many of my dealerships have them right up on the board behind the parts or the service counter. So I would add a little bit to it.
Great.
But I would not walk away.
Okay, perfect. Well, we're a couple minutes over. We appreciate everybody sticking with us. It seems like we could probably spend the rest of the day here, but we'll bring it to a close. As I mentioned earlier, today's presentation, the audio and a video replay are going to be available on rurallifestyledealer.com in the event you want to go back and review anything. Keep an eye on your email for the upcoming eBrief email newsletter for more information on when that'll be available. On behalf of Bob Clements, the Rural Lifestyle Dealer staff, as well as the folks at Best Wave, thanks very much for taking the time out of your busy schedule for us. When you leave the webinar, a short survey is going to pop up, and if you could take a minute or two to just let us know what you thought of the event or any topics you'd like to see covered in the future, we'd appreciate your feedback. And again, if you have additional questions for us or for Bob, feel free to shoot those over to us. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks, David, again for sponsoring this.